Welcome to Watercolor with Alpine Asters.
And here are the supplies that you'll need: 140-pound watercolor paper, 2 jars of water, round brushes in sizes 2, 4, 6, and 8, paper towels in the reference images, and these colors of paint, or whatever you have that is similar to these: French ultramarine blue, Quinacridone rose, Hansa yellow medium, and finally later we'll be using sap green.
So the first thing that you need to do is to mix up a little bit of yellow paint, make it kind of the consistency of milk like we talked about earlier, and then you're going to just start dabbing the paint on. These flowers, I think I mentioned earlier, but they kind of have a little points that stick up out of the center, and so to help communicate that, just dab it on rather than painting it on in a smooth way. I'm going to mix up some purple using the French ultramarine blue and the Quinacridone rose, and you want to mix up a pretty good puddle of it. It doesn't have to be exactly the same shade as mine, and we're going to do a few different layers, actually 2 different layers of petals. So this first petal layer should be fairly light purple, and one way to do that is to just add more water to it. So make it a little bit more watery, and then just put paint on your brush and start drawing some lines out. Remember, you're using your smallest brush here, and you can vary the thickness of them a little bit. In nature, not all petals are exactly the same on each flower, of course, so I like to start from the center most of the time. Sometimes I don't. Right here, though, you might not be able to tell, but I didn't wait long enough for the yellow to dry. And the yellow doesn't need to be completely dry. I kind of don't mind a little bit of the bleeding, but if it's too wet, then they'll blend together too much and we'll lose the effect we were going for. You can use a blow dryer on low to dry things if you don't want to wait, or you can just step away and get yourself something to drink and come back to it. So I started adding in just a little bit of the Quinacridone rose around the edges of the purple, and it's kind of pretty because it bleeds a little bit together where it's wet still. And so I'm going to try to start going back and forth with doing the petals coming out and then dropping in a little bit of the Quinacridone rose right around the yellow. It kind of adds to that illusion of the edges being rough around the yellow and uneven, and I think it just looks pretty too. So now I'm just continuing with adding the purple petals radiating out from the center of the flower. Most of the time anyway, I try to do it that way. Sometimes it gets awkward with your hand, kind of going the wrong way to pull it out, but feel free to turn your paper if that makes it easier for you. Now I want these petals to appear like they're going behind the other flower, which is a little bit tricky. I went in a little too dark right here, but it works out okay in the end. So it's better if you can kind of keep the paint lighter, or you want it to be behind, one flower be behind the other. So you can see I keep adding more lighter paint here as much as I can. And this is just the first layer of the petals. We'll go back in and do a little bit more, add some more layers there in a bit. I like that sometimes the paint changes color a little bit. I think it makes it more interesting. My whole philosophy with my own painting is that I want it to look somewhat like the object, but I'm not going for photorealism. I think I love photorealism when other artists do it, but for me, it's not, honestly, it's not as relaxing. and I just find it interesting to try to do things like flowers or what other objects I'm painting in my own style. And I would just encourage you to do the same. It's very fun to kind of continue to paint things and see your style, watch your style develop. I wanted to show some of the petals that are behind this flower. I think my paint's a little too dark on those petals, but it's okay. It was a little tricky to show that. You can look at the reference image and see how some of the petals are kind of poking through. You always have to be careful too to know where the paint is wet so that you don't smear it with your hand as you're painting. So sometimes it helps to just turn the paper so that your hand's not in any wet paint. I'm making the paint just a little bit darker to go over the other petals. I like changing the color up as I'm going through. Again, I just think it adds so much more interest. It's good to pay attention to the angle that the petals are at and to notice if the petals are curving in a certain way. It helps make it look just a little more real. I'm ready to add a darker pigment in, and so I've mixed up this darker purple, and basically it has less water than the lighter purple, and it also has more blue in it. Many of these petals are already pretty dry, so they're ready for a second layer. Watercolor dries lighter. When you put it on, it looks darker and then it dries lighter. And so it's good to kind of think about that and plan for that. So this second layer is adding in some darker petals on top of the lighter ones. Adds a little depth and interest. And it also gives an illusion of kind of the darkness behind the petals, like shadows. Now, if you notice, I'm not adding dark purple to every petal, but just kind of scattered around on the flower. I don't want to cover up all the lighter purple that's underneath it. Remember to keep adding water to your paint as it gets a little bit more dry. I have to pay attention. A lot of times I will end up dipping my brush in the dirty water instead of the clean water to add water to the paint when it gets dry. I think I get so involved in painting that I'm just not paying good attention. I think one of the things that happens as you paint more and more is kind of an intuitive sense develops. And but it takes time and it takes a lot of practice. That's been my experience, at least. So give yourself grace if you don't like the way it's turning out at first, and just keep practicing. I would say even with this one, make more copies or more sketches on paper, and then try it again, and it will get easier, and you'll develop some muscle memory, and that intuitive sense will grow in you too. I wanted to add a little bit more contrast to the center of the flowers, and so I'm mixing the Hansa yellow with the Quinacridone rose to create kind of an orangey color, and adding more dots. And I don't want to cover it, just maybe kind of pick a side. So the way I'm painting, I'm thinking of the light is coming in from the top right. So then the shadow for the center would be more on the bottom left. And so I'm just adding little dots in. I'm ready to add some green leaves using the sap green. I also switched to a number 6 brush. It has a slightly pointier tip to it. Photo that we were using doesn't really show the stems. It shows a lot of leaves, but not the stems. So I wanted to use another photo, so that's why we have this second reference to see how the stems and leaves grow. There are a lot of little leaves coming off the stems. So you can stop the video and look at that if you want. But I recognize that the stems are have quite a bit of that kind of pink, that Quinacridone rose pink, but also a little green. They're not totally pink. So what I'm doing is I'm using my smallest brush with a little bit of that Quinacridone rose on it. Then I'm coming around it with just a little light touch of the green. And you have to be careful. Don't make sure your brush doesn't have too much paint on it, or not too wet of paint on it. Otherwise, it will just completely run together and not look as the way you would want it to look, I would think. So just start with a little pink and then add a little green. As you can see here, I'm using 2 brushes and going back and forth just a little bit. And now I'm adding some leaves with the green. And again, the leaves, you've noticed the shape, they're kind of longer and skinnier leaves, not real big. And so you can use the sketch that I drew, or you can add more leaves in if you'd like. Like I said, we're kind of putting together 2 different reference images here, so have fun with it and be free to add as much as you would like. When you put your green, sap green can be kind of too bright sometimes. And so you can always dull it down a little bit by adding a little bit of that quinacridone rose to it. It can make it a more realistic looking green. You might notice that I got my hand in some paint and smeared it a little bit. So if you just tear off a bit of paper towel, dip it in your clean water and kind of lightly rub it on the spot, oftentimes you can get it out. Now, as you can see, I'm using a little bit of the quinacridone rose and mixing it in with the green. I wanted kind of a darker shade of the green to add the center line down the leaf. And I'm not putting it on every leaf. It can look a little cartoony if you do them all the same. So I'm just doing it on some or most of the leaves. So here we are, we finished our painting. Add your name, and I hope you enjoyed painting a watercolor Alpine Aster with me. Thanks so much.